Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a crowd tonight. Thank you very much for being here. It's the most exciting day in our community. Let's begin this council meeting tonight for Thursday, November the 15th with a word of prayer. Let me ask Reverend Thomas Henderson to come forward, please, and lead us in our invocation. If you'll please rise.
Let's pray together. Father, in this Thanksgiving season, we thank you for the many blessings that we see coming from your hand. We thank you for those pioneers who came to these shores to bring about the freedom to be able to worship you and to honor you as our conscience see fit. We thank you for the pioneers of Temple in this part of Bell County and the great work they did. And thank you even for today for the announcement of continued growth. And pray that you'd guide us, Father, as this growth comes our way, that you'd give us wisdom to be able to use it to help all of our citizens, Lord, to achieve those things that they deem very important and very precious. Thank you for each one who sits on our council. Thank you for all who will come and speak. And Lord, may the proceedings here be that which improves the quality of our community and enables us, Father, to continue to follow your will for each of our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Chief Lonzo Wallace, if you'll come forward and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Mayor, I'd like to ask that this group of Boy Scouts, if they join me with leading the pledge. Step forward. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start our agenda with the last item tonight. We're going to take item 15 and move it up to the front. Many of you were just here for the announcement of the Gulf States Toyota project and the fact that they're coming to the city of Temple. And so there's some action required by the Temple City Council tonight on that item. The item reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an economic development agreement relating to a 317-acre tract of land located at the southeast corner of Moores Mill Road and Wendland Road. And Mr. Blackburn, I'll let you open us up on that item.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Graham, the City Attorney, here in just a moment. Just a few opening comments relative to that. As was indicated in the press conference that we just completed, very exciting announcement, and very happy to be able to present to you proposed economic development agreement for your consideration tonight. There are multiple components to that. It's very a complex document in many, many ways, and the discussions and negotiations that led to this process, while the PowerPoint slides will summarize in fairly good order, I believe, the general terms and conditions of it. It is work to get to this point, as I know Council is aware of, and I do want to extend appreciation very quickly to Gulf States and the manner and the mode in which we went through those discussions. Mr. Cole, Mr. Owens, Mr. Avant, all of the Gulf States team, and the TDC folks, including Gary Schmidt, Lee Peterson, were intimately involved, as well as Jonathan Graham, our city attorney. And all of those folks came together over multiple days, multiple months, working to get to what is about a 10-point PowerPoint presentation here that took lots of time and energy to get to. I will turn it over to Mr. Graham to let him kind of walk you through the key components of the economic development agreement. I'll remind you again at the close of the discussion that what I am recommending to you is that you authorize the execution of this agreement. That is my recommendation. And with that, I'll pass it to Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn.
Mayor, members of the council, this is a Chapter 380 agreement, which we have done before. Chapter 380 agreements allow cities for economic development purposes to make grants of funds or land or property. And the agreement, basically, in kind of a summary, is a commitment by the city and TDC to convey some land for this project to Gulf States Toyota and to construct certain public improvements. The source of the funds for those improvements have already been budgeted by the council and by the city, and the source of those funds is the Tax Increment Financing Reinvestment Zone number 1. There will be a conveyance of the property and an inspection period by Gulf States Toyota. A commitment by Gulf States Toyota is to construct a vehicle processing center for Toyota and Scion vehicles. Some details of the city's commitment. We are conveying about 317 acres. Initially, about 100 of those acres will be used for their vehicle processing center, and that will include a lot of paving in that area, as you can imagine, some rail improvements, and somewhere between 180 and 230,000 square feet of vertical improvements. The site will be used for receiving, accessorizing, and distributing those vehicles. There is a long-term intent by Gulf States to use the remainder of that land for expansion of their facility. As far as the infrastructure improvements that the city is committed to under this agreement, they include the expansion of Woodland Road to 4 lanes from the loop up to Moores Mill Road, a left turn lane at the Walmart Distribution Center, and in other sections of Woodland Road, both an acceleration lane and a deceleration lane. The installation of a 12-inch water line along the western edge of the property or Woodland Road, installation of a 8-inch wastewater line along Woodland Road, and to serve this property and surrounding property, also a forced main and lift station to serve areas that wouldn't gravity flow back to Woodland Road, the extension of a 6-inch natural gas line along the western boundary of the property, and the construction of a stormwater detention pond or site on city-owned property that's just to the east of this tract that we would convey to Gulf States, and a box culvert from that detention pond back to the detention pond area. And Gulf States Toyota will pay for 1/2 or $925,000 of that box culvert, whichever is less. The final element, and I think probably the most important to Gulf States, is the rail park improvements, which the reinvestment zone has been working on for some time. And those include construction of a rail spur about 2,800 linear feet from the Burlington Northern Collection Yard to the south boundary of the property. Construction of a main rail lead about another 6,000 linear feet, a runaround section of track about 2,800 linear feet parallel to the main lead, a switch point or track leading into the Gulf States property, and about 7,500 linear feet of rail storage or ladder tracks for the storage of rail cars in that area. And at such times as Gulf States would begin development of Side B, the remaining area of the 300 acres, we would commit at that future date to construct about another 7,500 linear feet of ladder track or storage track in that area. And as part of the agreement, we appreciate it. Gulf States Toyota is going to work with the city to try to get financial assistance from BNSF for a portion of those rail improvements. On the Gulf States side, their major commitment is the construction of that facility, and as I said earlier, it's on about 100 acres of the 300 acres. It's what we're calling Side A in the agreement. As I said, a little over 200,000 square feet of vertical improvements or real property improvements, a lot of paving, and some on-site rail improvements by them. Well, our commitment for these infrastructure improvements we're doing in the land is an inducement for Toyota. It's just for this initial construction of this vehicle processing center. They do intend to expand that, and we are aware that if they do come forward with an expansion of that, they will be asking for additional incentives at that point in time. In the event that they chose not to develop that Side B, because that is some pretty valuable property, the agreement calls for them to reimburse the city at the then current market value of that property. And that date is timed to coincide with the end of our reinvestment zone. In summary, our commitment under the agreement by the city and TDC is to construct those infrastructure improvements which benefit not just this site, but that entire industrial park up there, and to convey the land. All of the infrastructure improvements we've talked about have already been funded and will benefit that entire area. The commitment by Gulf States is to construct a vehicle processing center on Side A, and it is their intent to build out Side B eventually. The commitments, the estimated value of those improvements is at least $50 million. They indicated that initially they will create at least 240 jobs at that site. As we just heard in the press conference, they hope to break ground in 2009 and have operations underway in 2011. And our commitment is the acreage and the public improvements. And those are the major elements of the agreement. As David said, a lot of people worked very hard on it. Try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Council, are there questions about the agreement? Mr. Blackburn?
Mayor, what I would like to do is give, we do have some guests in the audience that certainly played a large role in this process, and with your and council's indulgence, what I'd like to do is invite the immediate past chair, Gary Schmidt, to come forward if he'd like to make a few additional comments relative to the agreement, and then perhaps the Gulf States representative also.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn, Mayor, Council. It's indeed a wonderful day for our community as we work with this project. As you know, we have in fact been in discussion with Gulf States Toyota for a number of months. Both the TDC, in conjunction with very, very significant support by other partners, including the Reinvestment Zone, city staff, and of course participation and support from you as you recognize the value of this very significant project for our community. During this, there's both a significant amount of analysis, both the site and what would be the potential for that, but also an opportunity for the parties, Gulf States and us, to get to know one another. And through that process, I'm absolutely convinced that they will be a wonderful corporate citizen for our community, and we will benefit in great ways from that participation with them. I'd like, with your indulgence, to introduce a member of their staff who is also joining us today. Michael Owen, Vice President with Gulf States Toyota, been a part of their team also during this process. I'd like to invite him to say a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thrilled to have you here.
Mayor, Council, it is truly a pleasure to be here today. This has been a long journey. And on behalf of all the associates of Gulf States Toyota and our dealers, Gary and I would like to thank the city and the Temple Economic Development Corporation for helping us to find this site and to find the new vehicle processing center. This project is critical to our ability to continue to serve our dealers and to grow the dealers and to take care of our business. Our company was founded in 1969 and has been as a private distributorship and has been providing Toyota vehicles and parts to Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. We serve 148 dealerships with 150 outlets. Vehicle processing is a very large component of our business in serving our dealers and supporting the business. Your support and efforts in assisting with this planning have been beyond reproach. We are looking to have the capacity here and state-of-the-art facilities to support our dealers into the years to come. We're very excited about being here and very excited about the growth in Temple, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I think that from a staff, TDC, and Gulf States perspective, concludes our remarks and comments relative to this. And again, I would recommend your favorable consideration of the item.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Thank you, Mr. Owen. Appreciate it. Mr. Cole, thank you very much. Council, we have an item before us to consider the adoption of the resolution authorizing this economic development agreement. Is there a motion for approval of this item?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the economic development agreement for the property, 317 acres, located at the southeast corner of Morris Mill Road and Wendland Road. Is there any further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyrone?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Welcome to come. Young Scouts, you have just witnessed a very significant day in the history of this community. I hope you will remember it as you grow up and as you get to watch this plant grow. That, things like this that change a community. And you can say that you were here the day it happened. So we're glad you're here today. As we go back to our regular agenda, we have a public appearance scheduled today. This has been requested by our Mayor Pro Tem, Martha Tyrock. Martha?
Mayor Jones, Council, Councilman Jeter, Councilman Luna, our Aggie amongst us, Councilman Snyder.
Diego.
I have to say we have a wonderful staff, Tracy Bernard, that Baylor Bear, David Blackburn. You're a wonderful asset to our community. Thank you for being here. Jonathan Graham, my friend, when we first did Leadership Temple in 1990, you've done a great job. It's obvious what you've done with this contract with Toyota. Conette Insminger, I thank you for those emails, those morning calls. You can't put a price on you. I want you to know the last thing I would like to do today is, when I came on the council in 2000, there was a gentleman who was the mayor at the time, who's now former Mayor Kiefer Marshall, and he had a vision. And that vision is to buy a building that today we call Bioscience. A vision. I have to say this same council has that vision. That vision is, last week we passed a parks bond. Congratulations to the citizens of this community. Many of us, from years to come, will benefit from that. I look over the years of an animal shelter that is wonderful. There's no one in this part of the country who can say we have an animal shelter like this, because it is absolutely phenomenal. Also, I want to point out our public safety. Our public safety in this community, if you don't have public safety, you don't have a community. And I want to say thank you very much for many, many citizens that say, thank you for keeping me safe and keeping my house from burning down. And for the many fans that have been delivered, the many motion detectors, the alarm systems, it's those little things that mean so very much. For those phone calls, hey, you want to ride with us tonight and see what's going on in the community? I want to say thank you. Also, I want to say thank you for the participation of the community, the various committees, and especially this council, for all the transportation issues and discussions that we've had. There have been many, and they've been successful. I want to say a word to the employees of the City of Temple. I thank you. You are just absolutely phenomenal. And I will continue to always pray for you, keep you in my prayers. And I will continue bringing those cakes to various departments. I had a phone call saying, oh, you can't resign. We won't get a cake. I said, oh, no, I'll keep bringing the cakes. I want to say there's no place like home. We've heard that over the years. There's no place like home. My family has always supported me. My husband is here today, and my daughter. And yes, we pull in the driveway, and my husband always say, you know, there's no place like home. And I want to say there's no place like Bell County. No place like Bell County. And with that, I submit my resignation to you, Mayor, from the City Council as Mayor Pro Tem. And I want to say there's no place like Bell County. And I thank you.
God bless you. Michael and Gary, I want to assure it's nothing you said.
I just wondered if we were next.
Well, Martha has stepped out, but we wish her the absolute best. Everyone knows she is running for District 55 House of Representatives seat and made the decision that she needed to resign from our council to put her efforts towards that goal. So we commend her for her commitment to public service. We commend her for all that she has done for this community. And Martha, we thank you out there for all you've done for the city of Temple. And I know you'll continue to work for us.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I was trying to make eye contact with Claudette about. I think we do have in the works planning a reception honoring Mayor Pro Tem Tyrock's service to the city and to the council sometime next month. It'll precede regular city council meeting is the intent. And,
on December the 20th.
On December 20th. Yeah. So we'll make more details available to that as it gets closer, but we are planning that also. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We'll move on. Next item on our agenda is a proclamation. It's my pleasure today to get to present a proclamation for Food for Families. Reverend Tom Henderson with the Bell Baptist Association is here again, Bell Baptist Area Missionary. And Reverend Henderson, thank you very much again for being with us. Let me present this proclamation, and then I'll let you talk about what's coming up. All right. It's my great pleasure to present to you tonight a proclamation from the Office of the Mayor. Whereas Food for Families is a food drive which is a joint effort of several organizations to help reduce hunger in our community by collecting non-perishable food items for those in need. Whereas the City of Temple recognizes and offers full support to this most worthy community project, which is a giant positive step towards offering a helping hand to those who are less fortunate than others. Whereas we are grateful that our community is rich in caring citizens who establish and maintain food banks to serve people in time of need and who daily offer their talents and material resources to help their neighbor. And whereas we desire to commend the efforts of the sponsors of this project and those organizations who work to reduce hunger and improve nutritional standards in our community. Now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, do hereby proclaim the 16th day of November of 2007 as Food for Families Day in the city of Temple, Texas. And I urge all citizens to recognize the dedication, commitment, and deep concern for others which is established and exhibited by this project, and to give freely of non-perishable food items to ensure its success. In testimony whereof I witness my hand in the seal of the City of Temple on this 15th day of November of 2007. Reverend Henderson, it's my pleasure to present this to you, and we look forward to hearing some details about Food for Families coming up tomorrow. Tell us. Here you go.
Well, it is our pleasure. I represent 5 food pantries in our community and also one area of taking care of children and ministering to our youngest citizens. The reality is, in this time of year, we've all been very blessed. 2007 has been a great year, and we're excited about the opportunity of gathering together to help those who are having difficult times. Today, 2 of our food pantries took care of over 1,300 citizens in the Temple area, not just the city limits, but the area of East Bell County, and the need continues to grow. It's amazing the number of people that need our help. So we invite all of our citizens to come out tomorrow from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. to Scott and White parking lot. This is the largest food drive of its kind throughout the country. It encompasses about 11 counties. And last year, through the Channel 10, we gathered about 1 million pounds of food in this entire Central Texas area. We welcome all of our citizens, including our newest corporate citizens, to join us and to be a part as we help to minister and share and make a difference in the city of Temple and East Bell County. And thank you for your support over these 10-plus years. And God truly has blessed us, and now we get a chance to be a blessing to others. So come see us. We'll have a great day tomorrow.
Reverend Tom Henderson's provided tremendous leadership to this program over the last several years. I've had the privilege of getting to work with he and the committee to help in years past. So, Reverend Tom, we thank you for your continued efforts and great work for this most worthy cause. And Michael, you asked us what you could do. The community's going to already put you to work.
He's already told me.
Great. Okay, well, we've got another recognition tonight, and we've had the pleasure of recognizing this group in the past, and we get to do it again. It's more of the professionals that we have in this great community of ours and in our city government. And tonight, the City of Temple Purchasing Department has earned the 12th Annual Achievement for Excellence in Procurement Award for 2007 from the National Purchasing Institute. And this award is achieved by those organizations that demonstrate excellence in procurement by obtaining a high score on standardized criteria. The program measures innovations, professionalism, e-procurement, productivity, and leadership attributes. The City of Temple is only one of 24 cities to win the award at least 6 times. We have representatives from the Purchasing Department here with us this evening, and I would like to ask those personnel to please come forward. Belinda Matke is our Purchasing Director. Jane Brugman, 27 years of service with the city, 25 of those in the Purchasing Department. Ricky Hernandez, 20 years of service with the city, 5 years in the Purchasing Department. And Francis Garcia and Henry Ramirez. If you'll all come forward, please. Come. Up here. Belinda, come on up here. This is your team. That's a great team. Absolutely. 2007 National Purchasing Institute's 12th Annual Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. And it says right here, City of Temple, Texas. And I present this to you, and thank you for a great job, great team effort, and thanks to each and every one of you for your dedication to our community and our citizens. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Good to see you. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're all for you. Take one, pass them down. Great. Normally at this time, we'd have an opportunity for public comment. No one has signed up to speak on this item, so we'll just move on through. Next item is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a council member, and it will be considered separately. Council, are there any items that you'd like to be removed from consent? I'm going to ask that item O be removed from the consent agenda and item P be removed from the consent agenda. And we have item 4. Item 4A through R, with the exception of item O and P. If there are no other items, did I get that right? I'm sorry, this is item 6. Item 6A through R, with the exception of O and P. If there's no other items to remove, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve those items with the 2 exceptions of O and P.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item O is to consider adopting a resolution amending Resolution Number 2004-4025R to allow a board member to serve up to 6 consecutive years on the city board or commission. I've asked to have this item placed on the agenda, and then the only thing I wanted to bring up on this item is the fact that the resolution should read under Part 1 is that the City Council approves an amendment to the resolution to allow a person to serve 2 consecutive terms or 6 years, whichever is greater, on a city board or commission, and completion of an unexpired term shall not count against the length of service limitation. That completion of an unexpired term item was not in the original resolution, but it has always been a part of our term limits. that we've had, and I just wanted to make sure that that had gotten in there for clarification purposes. Other than that, it's exactly as stated. And so I wanted to pull that off and just make sure that was clarified. Are there any questions on that item? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion on item O of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve. Oh.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the resolution amending the previous resolution, 2004-4025, to allow a board member to serve up to 6 consecutive years or 2 terms, whichever is longer. There's no further discussion. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item P is to consider adopting resolution approving the fourth quarter financial results for the fiscal year ended September 30th of 2007. Ms. Bernard, you want to present those for us, please?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present the financial statements for the 12 months ended September 30th, 2007 for the City of Temple. Tonight I have a quick overview. I want to focus on the general fund, the water, wastewater fund, our capital projects, and briefly touch on our investments. General fund revenues for the year came in at 105.17% of budget. That variance was favorable, $2,549,000 over budget. Next slide, please. And it's with a detail of the $2 million, or what composed the composition of the $2,549,000. Our sales tax has been in the past exceeded our budget, $1,333,000. Franchise fees, interest income, other revenues, our airport sales and rentals, sanitation revenues, landfill contract. We had 2 revenue sources that were under budget that are netted in the $2,549,000, and that included the golf course and fines and fees. General fund, some revenue highlights. Our sales tax, major revenue source of the general fund, close to 28%. We had a 7.17% increase over the previous year. Our 5-year average, most recent 5 years, has been about 4.61%. Compared regionally to other cities, the sales tax revenue, as you see, Temple, about middle of the chart, 7.17%. Statewide, cities had a growth of about 7.64%. Ad valorem taxes, again, on this chart, I just focus on our percent of collection of current tax levy. FY07 was very close to the collection rate of FY06, close to 98%. Residential solid waste customers, this year we saw a growth of about close to 3%, 478 new residential customers. Again, it's indicative of our growth in our residential housing market, or just new residential homes. Housing permit indicators, I'm comparing, just to compare apples to apples. Statewide, from May 06 to 07, housing permits were down 19.8%. Temple housing permits during that same period were up 9.7%. Again, just indicator of the growth in our local economy. General fund expenditures were totaled actual expenditures $48.8 million. Again, came in at 94.69% of budget, which is about $2.7 million favorable variance. Of that $2.7 million, $554,000 was committed in operations or capital that was carried forward in encumbrances this year. Look, and this chart's kind of hard to see, but to me, a very important chart. It shows our philosophy and our budgeting financial practices. You see over the last 10 years, not any different than FY 2007, revenues continue to exceed budgeted revenues, and expenditures consistently come in under budgeted expenditures. You see the last on the far right column, the past 6 years, it's been very close to 94% of budget on expenditures, and revenues are consistently 104 to 105% above budget. That philosophy combined, our revenues over budget of $2.5 million, expenditures under budget of $2.7, other financing sources and uses, gives us a favorable variance of $6.2 million. Next slide, if you take that $6.2 million, we allocated it as follows. Encumbrances, as I mentioned, $500,000 earlier, capital and operations. Those were commitments that were carried forward. And below the line, we had $900,000+ transfers out that were committed. We fund balance designated for capital projects. We allocated $3 million to that. We allocated technology replacement fund of $350,000. We increased our what we consider our rainy day fund by $1.2 million. Public education channel, that's a restricted revenue, that allocation, and then another restricted revenue is our vital statistics preservation fund allocation to that, and then just a small net other to reserves. The next slide shows our fund balance designated for capital projects. This is a fund that's allowed a lot of pay-as-you-go projects. As of the beginning of our FY 10-106, it was close to $3 million. We had council-approved appropriations and reallocations. Reallocations of $218,000, appropriations of $906,000, brought it to a balance of, at 9/30/07 of close to $2.3 million. We added $3 million at the end of the year. And during our FY 08 budget, we had an allocation of close to $2.6 million for capital, and then we funded TxDOT right-of-way, some future right-of-way requirements of $280,000. That leaves that adjusted balance of close to $2.5 million. Very quickly, going through the water wastewater fund, it was a very wet summer, and that's reflected in our water revenues. We had total operating revenues compared to the previous year are down $950,000. Again, looking at our water customers, residential again reflects the growth in our residential housing. We had a growth last year of 507 customers, about 2.75% growth. Water consumption, as you look far right-hand side of the chart, it shows in our normal hot summer months, there's usually a lot of water consumption. This year it shows significantly down compared to the previous year. Next slide shows our rainfall. The blue line is last year's rainfall, or FY 07's rainfall. You all knew it was a very wet summer. Water and wastewater fund expenses, our total operating expenses increased, or compared to the previous year, increased very close to $1 million. Combine that, we have an operating net loss of $1.9 million. What I call below the line, non-operating revenues, we have interest income. We have a contribution from TxDOT of $1.3 million. That's their contribution to relocation of utilities on the Loop 363. And going down to the bottom line, total non-operating revenues, expenses were negative, close to $300,000. Very quickly going over our capital improvement program, we had total capital improvement as of 9/30/07 of $57.1 million. Majority of that is in our water, wastewater facilities in our reinvestment zone. Next slide. Our budgeted capital beginning the FY 07 was $57.1 million. Of that, $31.6 million is committed or expended, and that totals 55% of our budgeted allocations. Investments, our benchmark for our treasury funds is the 3-month treasury bill rate. As you just see, interest rates go up, go down, went up, and they're on their way back down. Asset allocation, we have total investments of $75.9 million. 70% of that's in government pools. The rest in T-bills or agencies, very little in cash. As I mentioned, our benchmarks, the 91-day T-bill, as of September 30th, that was a 3.82%. The city of Temple's portfolio was earning 5.1%. That concludes my presentation on the year-end financials. These are unaudited. In January, we hope to present the audited financial statements. You should see very little difference in what I presented tonight and what you'll see in January. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Council, are there any questions on the financials? If there are none, entertain a motion on the fourth quarter financial results for the quarter and year ended September 30th, 2007, subject to audit.
Motion to approve item D.
We have a second. And we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter.
Aye.
Councilmember Luna.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 7, regular agenda items, public hearing, conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the possible voluntary annexation of the following 3 tracts of land in the vicinity of Witter Lane and Forester Road, known as the Witter Lane annexation. That includes 3 tracts: the Central Texas Christian School tract, approximately 39.2 acres, the H.A. Johnson tract, approximately 22.3 acres, and the V.B. Connected Limited tract of approximately 44.5 acres. Mr. Blackburn?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll briefly introduce the item and I'll hand it over to Mr. Graham. As you're aware, we received recently a petition for voluntary annexation. 3 tracts are involved along Whittier Lane: Central Texas Christian School tract, the H.A. Johnson tract, and the V.B. Connected Limited tract, all totaled 39 acres, 22 acres, and 44.5 acres. There's a process we must follow under state and local law, and I'll let Mr. Graham go through that in terms of considering this application. This is a public hearing tonight to receive those comments for the possible voluntary annexation, and I'll let Mr. Graham go over the details of the process.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Even though this is a voluntary annexation petition, which you accepted at your last council meeting, we are still required by law to conduct 2 public hearings, of which this is the first. The Director of Planning, Tim Dolan, has prepared a municipal services plan for this area, and that is available to anyone who's interested in seeing it. It doesn't propose the construction of any new public facilities, but does, as we are required by law, provide that within 60 days of annexation, we would begin providing municipal services. Our actual plan is, as in other annexations, to immediately upon effective annexation to provide those services, and we're confident that we can provide those services because it is adjacent to areas we're already serving within the current budget. You are required to conduct a public hearing tonight. We've got the second public hearing scheduled next week at November 19th at a special council meeting that you're having. And I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Council, questions on this item? There being none, this item is posted for a public hearing, so at this time I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. This item requires no action at this time. It was merely a public hearing. So item 8 is to consider adopting a resolution calling public hearings for December 4th and December 12th in regard to growth management study areas being considered for Temple-initiated annexation. Mr. Blackburn?
Thank you, Mayor. As council is aware, at the last council meeting, you authorized the initiation of a study or process for studying areas in our growth management planning process. The item I have before you tonight is to consider a resolution calling for public hearings on December 4th and December 12th relating to those study areas. I don't know if we have maps associated with these or not, if there's a general map, and if not, that's fine. I didn't ask Alan beforehand to pull that one up. There are 4 areas that we have identified, or that you have identified and authorized for study. We're calling them Area A, B, and C, and D. Area A is approximately 0.9 square miles located west of the current city limits along the line, generally following FM 2305 and extending to Temple Lake Park. That area includes approximately 222 people and 91 homes. Area B is approximately 1 square mile located west of the current city limits in the proximity of FM 317, north of FM 2305, and south of State Highway 36. That area includes approximately 8 people and 3 homes. The Area C is approximately 5.4 square miles located northwest of the current city limits in the proximity of State Highway 36 toward Lake Belton and north and west of Drawn Miller Regional Airport. That area includes approximately 291 people and 119 homes. And then finally, Area D is approximately 2.6 square miles located north of the current city limits in the proximity of the area east of the BNSF rail line, north of Moores Mill Road, and west of I-35. That area includes approximately 56 people and 23 homes. The next step in this process that was authorized at the last council meeting includes conducting public hearings within a 20 to 40-day window prior to the first reading of the annexation ordinances. We're recommending that those hearings be conducted on-site in each of the areas being considered and studied. The first on-site public hearing would be conducted, if this resolution is adopted, on Tuesday, December 4th, beginning at 9 a.m., and the second on-site public hearing would be conducted the following week on Wednesday, December 12th, beginning at 9 a.m. It is our intent to provide multiple hearings on that day in each of the locations, so there will be different time slots for each of the areas. The locations of those public hearings and the exact times, I think I have those.
David, I can read those
in the resolution. I do have them. Area A, 9 a.m. at the Veterans of Foreign War Post 10377 at 4 Woodland Trail. Area B, 11 a.m. on vacant land located along FM 2483, approximately 2,100 feet west of the intersection of FM 2483 and State Highway 317. Area C would be at 1:30 p.m. on vacant land located at the corner of State Highway 317 and Cedar Creek Road. And then Area D would be at 3:30 p.m. at 8060 Brewster Road. And we will, of course, post these on our website in different locations and certainly get them out to the media so that folks have copies of those. Again, those are public hearings scheduled to begin on December 4th at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 3:30 p.m. in each of those areas. And this is being, again, presented in concert with both state and local law requirements for us to consider these study areas. And with that, I'll pass to Mr. Graham to see if I've left out anything.
Well, I think you've covered it pretty well, but I just mentioned a couple things. One is, in addition to our website, we will also be publishing notice in the newspaper of those public hearings. And as David said, even though by law we're not required to, we are proposing to hold both these public hearings, the first and second public hearing in each of the areas. So Clyde has worked hard to identify some areas in each area that we could hold those public hearings. Just one other, I think, point of information that I would mention. In our initial letters or postcards that went out to residents of those areas, we mentioned that by law we're required to offer a development agreement to anybody in those areas that we're studying whose property is appraised by the Central Texas Appraisal District as either agricultural, wildlife management, or timber. We are in the process of putting those agreements together. The council has authorized the form. We're doing the letters, and I expect to mail those out either tomorrow or early next week, and those will be going out. We've worked with the Appraisal District to identify those tracts, and all of the property owners who do have ag property. I've gotten lots of calls, but there are quite a few of those residents in those areas. They will be getting those agreements in the next week or so. At the public hearings, we will present copies, have copies of the service plan available as well for these areas, and those will also, I think, be posted on our website as well.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Blackburn, and just to reiterate, those 4 sites and those times for those meetings will be on December the 4th and December the 12th.
Yes, sir. And Alan has pulled up, or better, will pull up from our website, which I would also want to just highlight and mention one more time. For those individuals that are looking for general information concerning maps and locations of the study areas, our website has posted all of those. That's what the page looks like. You just click on one of those maps, it'll pull it up in a lot more detail, and you can look at tracks. But those are the 4 areas that I described in narrative form just a few minutes ago. And again, be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions on this schedule, the locations, or the item itself? If there are no questions or comments, entertain a motion for the adoption of the resolution calling for the public hearings on the dates and times specified.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve item 8 for the adoption of the resolution calling for the public hearings. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Next item is an ordinance, first reading in a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance providing for the continued taxation of goods in transit otherwise exempt pursuant to Section 11.253B of the Texas Tax Code. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think I have a PowerPoint presentation. That'll help me out here. In the last session, the legislature adopted what has been termed the Super Freeport exemption. It is actually came about in 2001. Voters in Texas approved an amendment to the Texas Constitution, which provided legislation for this, but it wasn't until the last session that the legislature got around to adopting it. As I said, it's been called the Super Freeport exemption. It takes effect on January 1st, 2008. It's codified at Section 11.253 of the Texas Tax Code, and it supplements but doesn't replace. It's kind of a parallel section, the existing Freeport exemption, which is found at Section 11.251, which the city has not implemented. The Super Freeport exemption essentially, like the Freeport exemption, exempts goods in transit from ad valorem or property taxes, and those are goods that are either acquired in or transported into Texas, and that could be for the purpose of assembling, storing, manufacturing, with the intent to later transport them to another location inside the state or outside the state. And to qualify, the goods have to be held at a location owned by another entity with no interest in the entity or person who brought them in, and then transported to another location that could be inside or outside of the state within 175 days of the date when the owner acquired them or brought them into the state. The exemption really wouldn't impact our reinvestment zone because it applies only to personal property and only taxes on the increased value of real property going to the reinvestment zone. But the exemption will occur unless the taxing entity takes effect to opt out by the end of the year. Unlike the current or regular strength Freeport exemption, cities and counties can still opt out later, so you can opt in and opt out, unlike the Freeport, the regular Freeport, which once you do that, you're locked in and you can't change that. And just to kind of highlight some of the differences, the regular Freeport exemption applied also to goods held for 175 days, but they had to be sent out of state. So, and as I said, the regular Freeport, you could opt out initially, but once you adopted it, couldn't be revoked. With the Super Freeport, that applies both to goods that are shipped inside or outside the state, and you can opt out at a later date. Not all goods in transit are eligible for Super Freeport exemption. It doesn't apply to oil, natural gas, petroleum products, aircraft, dealers, motor vehicle inventory, vessels, outboard motors, dealers, heavy equipment inventory, retail manufactured housing, or other inventory held for more than 175 days. Super Freeport will go into effect, as I said, on January 1st, and we've got to take action. And at that meeting where you take action, you're required to conduct a public hearing, and we are posted tonight for a public hearing and then adopt the ordinance and resolution. think that's probably my last slide. I'd just say that we met with representatives, I think, from Bell County, Temple College school districts a few weeks ago, and at that time there was an indication from those other taxing entities that they would also be studying it. We visited with Lee Peterson, was at that meeting as well, and our indication at this time is that we don't think the Super Freeport would benefit the city, and I think Tracy may have some comments in that regard. We had done a study a few years ago. I think TDC commissioned a study on the regular Freeport exemption that indicated it would have a detrimental financial impact on the city, and the Super Freeport is broader than that in the sense that it applies both to goods shipped out of state but also in state, and particularly with the idea that we could, if we needed it at a later date, if we had a deal that really turned on that, we could opt back in at a later date. Our recommendation to you at this time is that we do opt out, and so for that reason we recommend approval of this ordinance on first reading after you conduct a public hearing. And I'll take any questions you may have, or David or Tracy may have some additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Bernard, Mr. Blackburn, anything else to add?
Only just to highlight what Mr. Graham indicated about, we have had some discussions with the other taxing entities in Bell County. To my knowledge, none of the other taxing entities will be considering the Super Freeport exemption, and we will be in concert with the rest of those jurisdictions.
Council, questions, comments on this item? There being none, this requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on this item.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of the ordinance providing for the continued taxation of goods in transit, otherwise exempt pursuant to Section 11253 of the Texas Code. If there's no further discussions, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 10, the resolution. Consider adopting a resolution authorizing the preliminary plat of the Lago Terra, a 59.781 acre, 83-lot residential subdivision located on the west side of Morgan's Point Road, south of Bonnie Lane, located partially inside the city of Temple and within its western ETJ, subject to the developer's requested exemptions to the subdivision ordinance for pavement widths and rights-of-way, cul-de-sac length, parkland dedication, and the utility cost-sharing policy. Ms. Lowerly.
That was a mouthful, and I'll try to explain it so everyone can understand all the details. This is a preliminary plat of Lago Terra. It is proposing 83 single-family residential lots, and it is on 59.8 acres of land. And this property I have right in this area. It's actually, I had it with the boundary, but that didn't come through on this slide, but it is actually within the orange area, which is a proposed area for annexation that we've been talking about in Section A. And so the subdivision actually, a portion of it is already in the city limits, and it is on the west side of Morgan's Point Road in this area, and then it extends to or towards the lake in this fashion. So the majority of the property is in our western ETJ. And the developer is requesting some exceptions, and I'll just go through those real quickly. The first exception is to Section 3393, streets, and that is concerning the pavement widths and right-of-way to allow the use of the rural local street section having a 22-foot asphalt pavement width with a 1-foot concrete ribbon edge instead of the minimum required 26-foot back-to-back pavement width to serve as a rural collector street, and that would be in compliance with the subdivision regulations. Section 3393 streets is in regards to cul-de-sac lengths, and so the developer is asking that we waive the maximum allowed cul-de-sac length of 500 feet
for the various cul-de-sacs within the subdivision, and I'll show you a plat with those cul-de-sacs in a few minutes. And then the next requested exception is Section 33-102, and that is the requirements for parkland dedication, and that would be to allow the development of tracts C and D totaling 2.414 acres for the private recreation of the residents and guests within the subdivision in lieu of the minimum required parkland dedication of 3 acres or payment of park fees totaling $18,675. And that total is based on $225 per new residential lot creation. And then the last exception that is being requested is to Ordinance 2001-2805, and that is concerning cost sharing. Our city's cost sharing policy actually stipulates that you need to pursue that during the preliminary plat process, and the applicant is asking that we consider that at the final plat process, and they plan to pursue that for off-site sewer development. And that is also dependent on their annexation into the city of Temple, because we can only do cost sharing within property that's in the city of Temple city limits. And so I have a picture of the plat on the screen, and it was reviewed by DRC on September 25th of 2007 and October the 30th of 2007. And what this shows, if you look at the red line, that is a division of the property within this subdivision that is within the city of Temple city limits, which is this segment in this area, and then the remaining property shows what is in the ETJ. So the subdivision actually follows along this boundary line. And I have the green areas shaded in that I mentioned earlier that is proposed for private park areas, and those are tracts C in this area and then tract D in this area. And you can see the various cul-de-sacs within this subdivision, and I will discuss those a little further in the next slide. Okay. At the November 5th, 2007 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission with a 6-3 vote and along with staff's recommendation recommended approval of the preliminary plat of Lago Terra subject to City Council's approval of the developer's requested exceptions for the following. And the recommendations are to amend the requested exception to recommend a 26-foot wide pavement for Lakeland Drive to conform with the subdivision regulations for rural collector size right-of-way, and also for exceptions to the cul-de-sac links for Cazadero Cove, Lockwood Place, Mullican Drive, Flowers Lane, and Lakeland Drive. Also, the recommendation is for exception for the parkland dedication, provided that the 2 tracts that I pointed out previously that were in green, being 2.4 acres to contain improvements equal to or greater than the park fees that are required for this development. And then we have added that any additions and/or alterations to the engineering plans as required by the engineering department. And as far as the cul-de-sac links, as I mentioned earlier, the minimum, or actually the maximum cul-de-sac length that the subdivision ordinance requires is 500 feet. And so I have a listing of all the cul-de-sacs within the subdivision, and as you can see, they are all exceeding the 500-foot lineage, the footage that's required by the, or that's allowed by the subdivision ordinance. And I have, this subdivision actually has 2 entrances into the subdivision, and so I have the distances from each point of entrance into the subdivision. And then this is a drawing of the plat. This is the furthest, or one of the furthest cul-de-sacs. This is the main entrance into the subdivision from Morgan's Point Road, and in this area is the secondary entrance from Bonnie Lane. And so this particular cul-de-sac that is highlighted on the screen is the Lakeland Boulevard, which is 2,500 feet in length. And then you can see the various other cul-de-sacs that I had this chart on the previous slide. And then I have the utilities on the screen. And as you can see, the light blue, it may be a little hard to see on the screen, but this particular area right here is the existing water line that the subdivision will be hooking onto for its water. And then we have the developer is proposing the sewer system in this development versus the septic system if he can get a cost-sharing agreement during the final plat process, if that is approved. And I believe that is it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyler.
You're welcome.
Council, questions on this plat?
What are the width, I know they wanted 22 foot, what are the width of the streets that go into the cul-de-sacs?
They would be 22.
So they are just the that main one they're one that the P&Z did not approve?
Yes, the main one that I have highlighted in red is the one that actually would be serving as the collector for the subdivision, and the P&Z, along with staff, felt that that should be be a wider street to act as the collector into that subdivision.
And that be 26 feet?
Yes, and that would be 26.
So the other streets within that subdivision would remain at 22 feet?
Yes.
But there will be no parking permitted on the streets within this subdivision?
Yes, the developer is proposing to have that as designated as no parking.
And that'll be controlled through the HOA, I get? I mean...
Yes, I believe they have, the engineer representing the applicant is here. He can answer that question.
Okay. Mr. Turtle?
Mayor and council members, Victor Turley, 301 North 3rd Street. What we're proposing is this will become in as an annex property, and so we propose that we actually post this by the city police department to post no parking. So before we were going to do it with the HOA, but with that coming into the city, we feel like that's a much better way of controlling it, and it has more authority to go ahead and post it. But we're requesting that happen, that be posted.
So if you don't have it in the HOA, though, then it becomes an enforcement issue if we can't get police out there to ticket and do things like that. Wouldn't the HOA actually give you more of an enforcement tool?
We also propose to have it under the HOA too,
okay,
doubly.
All right.
But the posting of the signage, I think, is the critical thing, because we talked about how we would post it with our signage, and I think the more appropriate way is to do it through regular city ordinance signs rather than signage placed by the HOA.
So, Mr. Graham, that would require us to adopt an ordinance for that particular subdivision as a no parking on the street ordinance?
Yeah, I think we have ordinances now that list the streets that are posted for no parking.
Okay.
We would have to amend that ordinance.
Okay, so that's really a process. It's just that simple. So, and then it becomes an enforcement issue for us as the city.
Mayor, as you have seen, we spent a lot of time, a lot of work. This is a very important development here in the city of Temple. One of the things that we would like to amend, would like to have the city council take into account and amend, is the length of that particular collector, because the collector goes all the way down essentially to the lake. And what we're saying is that if you look at Flowers Lane, from Flowers Lane on up is where the majority of the collection is, and that we would propose that the roadway, Lakeland, going down from the lake up to the top of the hill. In fact, that's where the majority of all of our trees is down from basically the top of and Flowers is the intersecting street, if you'll go right there, right there.
Oh, this is Flowers
Yes.
right here?
Plus the fact that that's also where our secondary entrance is.
Yeah, right.
So we are suggesting, and, I'd invite City Engineering Department to comment on that also, but we're suggesting that the additional collection width go from that point on to Morgan's Point Road as an amendment to your ordinance. Otherwise, we,
So
otherwise
say that
we
again.
agree.
What are you asking for?
We're saying that from that point on to the east would be the collection area with the wider width.
So you're asking for 26 feet for
From
what staff is
there.
recommending from there
Yes, that's correct.
to Morgan's Point Road, and
That's
then
correct.
then narrow from
Yes.
at that point to 22 feet the rest of the way
Yes.
out.
If
That's what
you'll
you're
see,
requesting.
you'll see how curvilinear the road is down there. We're dodging and moving around very large live oak trees. That's the reason for, in fact, this particular tract of land to be developed in this manner. The streets are very curvilinear as we go around the trees, and also it's quite steep as we go down that hill. It's more steep, I would say, not steep, real steep. So,
Okay.
with that, that's what we would suggest and hope that you all take into consideration. Otherwise, we've worked very hard with the staff has worked with us. We worked very hard with the city attorney on all of these, the annexation part and us having this particular development to come into town.
Victor, would you have on-street parking or not on the part that 26 feet to the...
No, again, the other part that we have is that we feel like that whenever you start widening the street, you're encouraging parking along there anyway. So, with a 24-foot wide street with the concrete ribbon, I think everyone would know that if you stopped your car on a street such as that, you don't, that would not be encouraged. Plus the fact that these are going to be most every home in here will have a looped driveway. They're going to be set back. These lots are probably 175 foot deep, so the home is going to be set back. We're going to have a horseshoe driveway on almost all of them. I don't think there'll be any garages that'll face the street.
My question is only really relating to the part where you would widen it back out.
Yeah, no, we propose no parking on any of it. It would only be there for the ease of moving traffic. Of course, as the CTAC has in your comprehensive plan, they also propose narrower streets, narrower than what we're proposing in this development too. So, anyway, we would suggest that as a compromise for that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Turley. Other questions, council, on this item? No public hearing, it's just...
So do we table it and let them come back, or, let the staff respond to what they've requested, or?
Staff could respond right now if you have questions for staff. Mr. Newman, you got a comment on Mr. Turley's request for a modification of your recommendation?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just this evening, I was speaking with Mr. Turley about this option, and I guess there's some merit given to the fact that there's a secondary access point from this intersection out to Bonnie Lane and then straight out to 2271. So, but still, there's quite a few residences that would be potentially affected by some portion of a collector street. Now, by definition, the collector street is to collect local streets and take it to a major arterial, but it also talks about connecting through traffic, which in this particular case, there's a terminal point right there. So I would request that if that's really the developer's option or alternative that's being proposed, that we have a little bit more time to ferret out the discussion on that.
Okay, you'd like more time to consider that?
Yes.
Okay. And
I mean, it sounds reasonable just in concept, but I think in fairness to other departments that may not even be represented here, that would be something that would be for further discussion.
Okay. Mr. Turley, would you be if you could just come back up.
Unfortunately, Mayor, this whole entire development is time sensitive. So we would hope that this would not be such a dramatic request, because a collector is also meant to collect when you have collection of traffic. When you're only dealing with 10 homes at the end of the development, we don't normally have collectors that collect for 10 homes.
But is this not going to function as a collector as well?
Well, essentially, it's a circulation. Those were all cul-de-sacs at the beginning of our initial preliminary development, and that road there was those cul-de-sacs were eliminated, and that road was connected so that you would have a place to come. You won't. In other words, all of those roads don't have to come down
That's what I said. We're making
to
an
Lakeland
assumption.
Boulevard to get to that location.
Seems like there's
So-
an assumption that this is going to collect everything, when in reality, you've got another collector here that goes out on Bonnie, right?
Correct. Yes. So we would appreciate it if we could have whatever decision you make to be made this evening, because this, unfortunately, this particular development, that's the reason it was changed. Because before, when we brought it in, this is an amended plat. We have a preliminary approval on the previous amount of property, but then we got an additional 11 acres to go with this.
Is this a preliminary plat?
Yes, this is a preliminary plat.
Once we get to regular plat, Mr. Graham or Mr. Dolan, as we come back, can there be a request to modify from that as far as some of these standards? Or so if we approved, say, a 26 tonight, and then could we go back to a 22 at some point if staff came back?
The consideration in front of you this evening for the preliminary plat sets the stage for the final plat. So any conditions associated with the preliminary plat must follow suit with its final. And so if there was the idea about the wider pavement area, it needs to be clarified this evening, and it wouldn't allow it to come back at the time of the final plat. That's why all the exceptions are identified at the preliminary plat stage.
So what do you do at the final plat?
The final
You
plat,
don't do it
it follows your recommendations this evening to set direction to complete the water, sewer, pavement, and drainage plans, and then proceed forward with its final plat on whatever conditions applied tonight.
So for our purposes, this is our final plat, even though this is preliminary plat, there can't be changes made afterwards?
It's very difficult to try to make changes at a final plat when the water, sewer, pavement, drainage plans for whatever lot and design, road consideration are in place.
Mr. Turley, what's the width of this road right here? I'm sorry, which?
Yeah, mine was timed
The
too.
top one.
This one here.
That's 24 foot.
Okay.
Stop your playing games.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Turley. Council, your pleasure.
Oh, you can't. You can't talk about it. Ah, now I understand.
Oh, you're abstaining on this item?
He's not even tell you, he's just going to sit there and look at you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think could we take a short break and
If you would like us to take a short break, we can take a short break.
I think I want to make some comments, but
I think,
You want to check something out before we do that?
Yeah, Mayor, I will jump in there too. I think, based on the questions that were just raised in terms of preliminary plat, final plat, alterations or modifications that can be made between those two and how those might occur, if those could occur, I think it might be advisable if maybe the city planner and city attorney maybe had some discussion about that, and then we'll make sure we've...
10 minutes?
or less.
5
Or
minutes?
less, I would say 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just take a quick little break here, and then we'll come back into session. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're back into the regular session, and after a short recess. Mr. Blackburn, you want to give us a recap of where we're kind of...
I think we had, yes, Mayor, since I certainly had requested the recess, or the short recess, I think we've had some discussions. I don't want to mischaracterize the comments from either the planning director or for the city attorney, so I'll try to summarize those to some degree, and then I certainly want either one of them to jump in here if I mischaracterize any statement that I'm about to make relating to the mayor's chat before you. I think it is our staff's collective determination at this point that, number one, the recommendation that we would put in front of you continues to be the recommendation that staff brought at the beginning of the discussion of this item, as well as the recommendation of P&Z. Obviously, we cannot alter or change that recommendation, or our staff does not do that, but we would continue to assert that recommendation for council's consideration. However, I think, again, we do believe that there is the potential or the possibility for the applicant at the final plat, through the final plat process, to request an amendment to this preliminary plat, or change this preliminary plat that would narrow that street width along, I forgot the name of the street, but that would narrow that street width. However, in so doing, that would be at the applicant's expense and risk to pursue that course of action. But I think the understanding, again, from discussions with the city attorney have been that from a purely legal standpoint, there is an opportunity for council to consider something other than what is presented at the preliminary plat. We just want to make very, very clear that in so doing, it would be clearly and solely at the risk of the applicant to pursue that course of action after the preliminary plat approval at whatever level that is given. With that, I will pause and see if either Mr. Graham or Mr. Dolan want to correct any of the statements that I've made.
Well, I agree with the statement you made, and I would say that not only is this the staff's recommendation, but as Mr. Dolan pointed out during his presentation, it's also the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission in their vote and recommendation to you on this item. I think as a legal matter, the council, when they are presented with the final plat, their initial inquiry, whether it's P&Z or City Council, is whether that final plat is in conformance with the subdivision ordinance and with the preliminary plat that's been approved. If it isn't, then even on a final plat, what the developer or what the applicant is asking for is a variance from that. Is it possible to do that even on the final plat? I believe it is possible to do that, but the developer would have to understand the council would be under no obligation to approve it because it's not in conformance with either the city ordinance, its subdivision ordinance, or the preliminary plat that was approved. So I think there is sort of a window of opportunity. I think I hear the city engineer saying he's just been presented with this new design. He hasn't had any chance to look at it. The fire department hasn't looked at it. No other department has really had a chance to consider it, this tweaking of the design. And I would just echo what David just said, that if the developer or his engineer wants to, should the council approve it, inconsistent with the staff recommendation, the P&Z recommendation, if he wants to pursue a redesign or a different design and try to get the support of the staff and come back with a final plat and ask for an exception on final plat, that's possible to do it. It would be a whole lot easier to get that done if he could come up with a design that got the support of the engineering, fire department, and the planning staff as well.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Thank you for that. Me personally, I'm certainly, I lean heavily at this point, and I will at final plat too, to staff's recommendation, and I certainly would like to give staff that opportunity to look at this, and I couldn't vote tonight to approve anything other than their recommendation. If Mr. Turley, you could live with that, and that's my personal, that's not speaking for the council, would hope that we could examine this, if you want the preliminary plat approved this evening, and I don't want to act like I'm speaking for the council, but as it's proposed, so it can move forward and then come back. But it is at some peril that the council doesn't do it because staff, for some reason, says, no, this doesn't make sense. And again, I can only speak for how I might lean at that point. So I would hope we give staff the opportunity to examine something, we want your development to move forward as much as you do, but we certainly want to respect staff and make sure it's safe from all areas. So, and that's all they ask for, and I certainly want to accommodate them because they do a great job for our citizens, and that's what we ask them to do and we pay them to do. So. That's my thought at this point. So, council, if there's no other, are there any other questions or comments anyone wishes to make at this point? If not, then I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Motion to approve this item as presented to us originally tonight.
With the exceptions as recommended by staff and
Yes.
Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Abstain.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Next item is item 11, and thank you, Mr. Turley. I appreciate your patience, your explanation, and that, and your request. Next item is to consider adopting resolution authorizing the final plat of the Clark Addition, one single-family lot on a 3-acre tract of land located on the north side of Moores Mill Road between Wendland Road and Brewster Road, subject to the developer's requested exceptions to the subdivision ordinance for paving, curb, and fire protection requirements. Mr. Dolan.
Mayor and City Council, this is not a public hearing, but a final plat this evening to consider 3 requested exceptions with this project. The first one focuses on the city code dealing with fire hydrants and the fire department. And the second and third one deal with the payment of park fees and also the use of ribbon curbs on rural streets. All the departments recommend approval except for the park fee, that we do need to believe that it needs to be paid since it's inside the city limits. This is a picture of the platted lot of the approximately almost 3 acres with a surrounding parcel behind it, and then the exhibit now just shows an existing building on the site where the applicant does plan to build a single-family house. The applicant is here to answer any questions that the council may have, but the Planning and Zoning Commission and the staff recommend approval for the item number 11, the plat FY 0804. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. It seems to me we might have seen this area of our community already this evening.
Yes, you have.
This is in the middle of our industrial park, directly across Moores Mill Road from where Gulf States Toyota is going to build that facility we've been talking about all night long. I'm sure there is nothing we can do about this from as you've explained it to me, other than to not approve the exceptions, other than to see if the applicants would be willing to postpone the decision on this, so we have the chance to really kind of explore this a little bit, because this is right in the middle of our industrial park, and there's going to be a lot of development going on in and around them, and more than likely right over the top of them in the future. We're entertaining growth management plans for areas on that side of Moores Mill Road, along the railroad tracks to the east, and it wouldn't surprise me if in the not too distant future if this area is included in that as well, for that area that's not already in the city limits. So.
The applicants are here this evening.
Yeah, okay. Would you mind coming forward and let us... I apologize for the fact that we're catching you here in the council meeting when we're trying to make a decision, and this wasn't, brought to you before this point. Mm-hmm.
Just down the road for the same situation.
Okay, so you were on one of those 10-acre sites, or were you?
6 acre.
Were you? Okay, you were on the 6-acre on
Yes, sir.
Moores Mill Road.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, what I hope is that we don't get ourselves into the same situation again.
Well,
I
I understood that we were probably in
know.
a situation that something would be happening down the road. I don't know what to say other than that. We're looking at future plans for the city.
Well, and I guess you're at a final plat, and we have to make the decision on the exceptions, as I understand. Is that correct, Mr. Dolan?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Graham? And
There's tons of homes all down that side of the road already.
I understand. So, but there's one that's not there right now.
Yes.
Okay, and so if you would be willing to at least give us a little time with you, so we're not doing that at this point, so we can look at that.
We're on a kind of a time limit of where we're staying at now in an existing home.
And I'm not talking a lot of time.
Okay.
I'm just, in the next couple of weeks, the next month anyways.
Mayor, what are you thinking the outcome? I mean, what are you thinking that the outcome will be in looking at it?
That there's other options for building a home, other than adding another home for us to potentially have to buy at some point in time, and developed property as opposed to undeveloped property. If somebody comes along and says they want to build in our industrial park, which is why we've got the industrial park.
So are you envisioning a scenario where we would buy that land from him, or just basically not approve his exceptions?
That's what, I want time to talk with staff about and with the applicant, with Mr. Clark. Or is this the Clark? I'm sorry, you're Hendricks. It's the Clark addition. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, we've already displaced him, and he has this other land, and he wants to build a place to live, which he's going to be out of pretty soon. How long are you going to keep moving out? As long as it takes.
Well, I mean, we know where we've got an industrial park.
Well, he was there first.
Yes, and so we were able to purchase his, he negotiated with us, we were able to purchase his home and his land where he is now. And do we want to do that again? And there may be others, I agree with you. I've been down Moores Mill, and you're right, there are a number of homes there. And so is that, and all I want to do is with the gentleman, if at some point he says, I'm fine with that. Build there, and if you come to me at some point in time, and we both do it with eyes wide open, if that's what Mr. Hendricks wants to do, and that makes sense for us at the present time, then great.
I don't feel comfortable tonight saying let's delay this decision unless Mr. Hendricks says I don't have a problem with that. I'm not in that big a hurry to get redeveloped or anything. But if he wants an answer tonight on that particular piece of property. I mean, and he knows he's across the street from an industrial area. I mean, I have a hard time denying that tonight or any of that type, unless Mr. Hendricks said, hey, I've got a month or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever. But if it's a time sensitive issue, I can make a decision tonight. I mean, that's the way I feel. I mean, if he needs it tonight, I don't see how we can.
I can make a decision tonight because really the only decision is whether to grant his exceptions or not on the final plat.
And what difference would that make tonight? I mean, if we did, let's say, if we went ahead and granted the exceptions tonight, okay, they're done. Let's say next week he can go build. That's fine.
Build a home.
But he still may be willing to negotiate or talk about it in the interim if he so desires, if he wanted to do something different. Yep. But I would hate to delay this decision tonight on exceptions based off of that. I'm kind of like, but.
And that's fine. I mean, it's at the council's pleasure, and As I said at the beginning, I apologize for having to do this in the council meeting where you're asking for the approval. I didn't see it till I went through the council packet in the last couple of days.
This is
and it dawned on me where
completely
it
thrown
was.
on us with the Toyota plant and stuff. And it is kind of time sensitive. We've been waiting about 4 months to try to get started since the buying of our home. We're trying to get started. We're kind of in limbo the whole time, trying to do something.
Mayor, can I make a comment? I think when we are asked to approve plats in our ETJ, and this is something that comes up, although there are parts of the town that this would come up as well, where we're asked to make an exception for fire protection, that the city staff has reviewed the proposed plat, looked at the infrastructure that's there, and said in this case the water line is inadequate for fire protection. Where the staff has recommended, I guess the police department and the public works department has recommended waiving that, is where it doesn't look like it's likely that in the foreseeable future that there'll be a water line there, and so requiring them to build their system, so if they're doing a subdivision based, that would need a larger line to provide enough water and pressure there to deal with it, is maybe unreasonable, because we don't think water's going to be there anytime soon. I think the one factor that's different with this one is because of the project that you considered tonight, that part of our obligation out there is to build some water lines and sewer lines out in that area. And I'm not sure that when the staff reviewed this some time ago, that they realized that there was going to be a better water line out there. And I think that is one factor that's a little bit different, and even a couple weeks we might have a better sense of that. I agree with what Councilmember Schneider is saying. I think that this isn't a zoning case. It is a case that is asking, does the plat conform with the subdivision ordinance? And admittedly it doesn't in 3 respects, and that's why it's having to ask for exceptions. One of those is the water and fire protection, and I think I'm not an engineer, so I haven't really looked at the water line that's being proposed for that area that we're going to build, the reinvestment zone, whether that would make any difference. And I think that's a serious issue. It has to do with making sure that your home, if you build it out there, has adequate fire protection. And I think that is probably worth 2 weeks of time. And it may not change the staff recommendation, or it may, I don't know.
But he's going to build anyway, whether he has fire protection or not.
Well, he cannot build if you don't approve an exception to the
But if we
plan.
approve the exception, he's going to build without the fire protection, or if the water line in 3 years, he's going to...
If you approve it with that exception. But you may come to him and say, we're not going to approve it, but in 6 months there'll be a water line there. Or, I don't know.
Let me ask one other question. Moore's Mill, that's roughly the footprint of the Northwest Loop, or the new outer loop.
The proposed future outer loop.
Correct. I mean, something that I would suggest, as far as location of where your home site might be, that it would be at any proposed right-of-ways of that footprint of that road, or that any of that.
Just for clarification, on the proposed final plat, it does show the right-of-way dedication for the planned roadway.
Okay,
and it would need to come on this other side too as the property
That would
develops.
be my only concern later on down the road.
So the right-of-way dedication is being made as a part of this final plat in this area right in here.
Had an easement going up that west side of the property up towards the house, isn't it?
These are utility easements, but essentially the 12.5-foot right-of-way dedication parallel to Moore's Mill Road is happening as part of this plat. And when this area here develops, the same right-of-way dedication would have to happen through its platting stage, which provides sufficient right-of-way width for that loop.
I guess what I would ask the applicant is, under state law, the council has to act on your plat within a certain period of time, and I'm not sure, Tim,
We're close to that time period.
without your agreement to extend that period of time, we've got to act within 30 days. We would either have to vote on it tonight, or you'd have to give us an extension to the next meeting. And if you will do that, I think 2 things could occur. We could have a better idea about this water line and fire protection. Does it have any meaning to you? And you just heard some significant news about a development that's going across the street from you that is going to be, from my understanding, probably a 24-hour-a-day operation. And maybe you didn't know about the outer loop. Is that?
I knew about the outer loop.
That's been discussed.
Those are two factors that I think are, the fire protection ought to be important to all of us, and the news about what might be occurring across the street may be new to you.
And there is a fire extinguisher across us right at the driveway now.
Pardon me?
There is a fire extinguisher at the driveway now.
Fire hydrant.
Fire hydrant.
Yes.
But I think our point on that is often that those are on undersized lines, and I think that's the basis of the recommendation, isn't it? Or no? No?
Yeah, it's
It's Pendleton Water Supply.
Is it on an adequate line, Michael?
There's two water lines along Moore's Mill. On the north side is a 1.5-inch line that's more like serving as a domestic line. On the south side is a 6-inch line, which typically is sufficient for fire flow. So, but let me caveat everything to say it is the Pendleton Water Supply, so we do not have obligations to provide service, water service at this location. It's in a different certificate of convenience and necessity area.
Mr. Hendricks, do you want to wait? Your call.
I want to ask him a question first. How long have you lived on that land, or that the city brought from you?
I've been there for 10 years, and it's been a family plot for 60-some years.
Have you ever had fire protection there?
Yes.
Your former home,
The former home, just the protection that's there now.
the Pendleton?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you want to wait or not? Your call.
I believe there is enough considerations to delay it for the next 2 weeks.
That's all I'm asking, so, just for you and the city both. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Hendricks, I appreciate that. With your permission for that delay, then, council, if it's your pleasure, I'll entertain a motion to table that item for 2 weeks to give us a chance to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean...
Are you feeling
You
pressure?
don't feel like we're pressuring you
to delay? I mean,
to delay this.
You sure?
The Toyota plant, doesn't that something we need to consider also?
Okay.
We
Good.
didn't know he was going to be there.
Okay. I understand that.
All right.
That was the idea.
So we need a motion to table it or no?
So we want to make sure we're not, delaying some of your plans. If I don't want to pressure you into delaying it.
We waited 4 months already since we sold the house.
You're okay with a couple weeks?
It's not going to hurt us anymore.
Okay. Well, the next meeting would actually be December 6th would be our next council meeting.
Can I ask an exception of considering the extension where we're staying at while we're waiting on all this?
Oh, and you're in the house.
We're in the house that we sold right now.
What's that extension? I mean, when are you supposed to be out of that?
In 8 months.
In 8 months.
It's a year, and we're already 4 months into it.
Like I said, we'll give you a decision in 2 weeks, and so, December 6th, yeah, whatever.
3 weeks.
It's that 3 weeks, are we in a long week? Okay, so it's 3 weeks until our next city council meeting, but we'll work with you in the very near future, in the next few days, to get something arranged so we can help you to make a decision there that then we can provide additional information to see if all the exceptions are necessary still, or if how we proceed. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hendricks. Appreciate your consideration. If it's the council's pleasure to table this item, or a motion, that's your pleasure.
I don't like this. What do you
Motion to table item 11 until the next council meeting.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks, and thank you to the council. Item 12 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the final plat of a Woodland Ridge Estates, a 28.87-acre, 5-lot residential plat located on the south side of FM 436, east of Centennial Road in Temple Southeastern ETJ, subject to the developer's requested exceptions to the subdivision ordinance for park fees, paving, curb, and fire protection requirements. Mr. Dolan.
Again, Mayor and Council, the plat in front of you this evening is located in the ETJ. It's approximately 3/4 of a mile from the city limits line, and or from the ETJ line, pardon me. And so it's very close to the ETJ boundary. The requested exceptions in front of you this evening focus on three things. Again, fire hydrants, park fees, and also the idea of for ribbon curbs on a rural street. This shows the proposed 5-lot subdivision. All the areas measure in acreage from anywhere from 2 to 5 to 6 acres. You will notice in the bottom left-hand corner there is actually a cemetery on this lot here. This does contain a private access easement for anyone being able to have access to the proposed private cemetery on Lot 2. This is very atypical for any single-family subdivision, but it does include that. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed it and unanimously recommended approval of the three exceptions, looking at parkland dedication, curbs, gutter, and sidewalks, and also with the fire flow for this area. This is planned for a 24-foot wide paved road for or 22-foot with the 2-inch ribbon curb to come in off Farm to Market Road 436. It also requires the cul-de-sac overlength because it's approximately 770 feet long, approximately 70 feet longer than what the cul-de-sac regulations allow in the subdivision ordinance. The applicant engineer is available this evening to answer any questions from the commission or from the council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions also.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Council, any questions on this item? There being none, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the final plat for the Woodland Ridge Estates. There's no further discussion. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 13, consider adopting a resolution canvassing the returns of the November 6, 2007 election relating to the issuance of $9,750,000 in bonds for park and recreation facilities and projects. Mr. Blackburn.
Mayor and Council, as you're aware, on August 23rd, you called for the bond election on November 6th. On November 6th, that bond election was held for the issuance, or proposition of the issuance of $9.75 million in bonds for parks and recreation facilities and projects. The council also authorized that joint election, a joint election agreement with Bell County to conduct that in conjunction with statewide constitutional amendment elections. The official returns, as certified by the Bell County Elections Administrator, are as follows. For Proposition 1, the issuance of $9,750,000 City of Temple tax bonds for park and recreational facilities and projects. There were 2,156 votes for, 1,168 votes against. The proposition did pass, and the action item that is required of you tonight is to officially adopt resolution canvassing the returns of that election. Be happy to answer any questions, or since Mayor will also be able to assist in that regard also.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Ms. Desmond, anything else we need to know or do on this one?
Sir.
Okay. Council, your pleasure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the resolution on the canvassing of the votes for the Parks Bond election. If there's no further discussion or questions, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 14 is consider adopting a resolution appointing one member to serve as the city's representative on the Board of Directors of the Tax Appraisal District for Bell County for a 2-year term beginning January 1st of 2008. Currently, Mr. Del Martin serves in that position, is eligible for, and would be willing to serve for another term if reappointed. And it is the recommendation to reappoint Mr. Del Martin to that position on the Board of Directors. Is there a motion for that appointment?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Mr. Del Martin for reappointment to the Board of Directors, the Tax Appraisal District of Bell County for a 2-year term beginning January 1st of 2008. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 15 on our agenda, we did it already. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our city council meeting this evening. We are adjourned.